Hello. Hi. So, you might notice that this format is a bit different, and the topic is a bit different from what we've been covering recently. For most of my usual format, I typically try to post, a full-on scripted deep dive analysis of video games and their discussions on mythology and their connections to mythology. This time around, I wanted to do more of a free rant of mythological topic that pertains to what is going on now in the US of A, and this even around the world, actually. But it's also a topic that connects to video games and as well as ancient beliefs and history, actually. And that is gender fluidity. In recent years, months, even days as I'm recording this, the federal government and even the state governments have been progressively putting in more and more anti-LGBTQ plus legislation. From Louisiana, banning gender affirmation or affirming care for transgendered youths, prohibiting transgender students from participating in sports, restricting diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in Ohio, to, the most recent one was the bathrooms having only male and female, and there's no unisex bathrooms, which has sparked a lot of controversy. So I just wanted to briefly touch on the fact that this belief that, transgender, third gender, multiple genders are a more recent topic in life, and show that this is just false, and that beliefs in gender fluidity dates back thousands and thousands of years. But we'll also look at it in a video game perspective to show that this isn't just a history thing. But let's start off by going over some of the more notable video game characters that we see who are represented as either gender fluid or trans or being a third gender or whatnot. Of course, feel free to comment on anything you feel strongly towards or even against, or anything I might get wrong on this. But some of the most notable characters that we see that are gender fluid, first and foremost, if you've seen the live streams, is when I play Hades, there's the character Chaos. Chaos is extremely gender neutral. Like, you see that they are a very androgynous figure, having both masculine and feminine features on them. Even their voice has both a masculine and feminine sound to it. So, and that's kind of how Chaos is really meant to be represented, because it's just the chaos of the universe. It's from that chaos that everything got created in Greek mythology. So it's very fitting that you wouldn't have it as either a masculine or feminine, because both are chaotic and neither are chaotic. It's just chaos. So another notable video game character, and I think one that actually sparked a lot of controversy or a lot of discussions when this game came out, was in Hogwarts Legacy. You have Serona Ryan, who was very much a trans character. And of course, as J.K. Rowling has been ousted as very much against the entire LGBTQ community, as well as just being a horrible person, it was very interesting to see that this character, that Serona Ryan, would be created for Hogwarts Legacy. And I think it's actually a very good thing to have as well, because it is something I actually really do want to touch on, is the fact that representation is seriously important, especially when it comes to these things, because you have so many people who don't have that representation in their everyday life, and having that representation in a game that a person might play, in my belief, makes them feel more at home, as well as it makes them feel seen. They're not alone in how they feel about who they are as a person, that they feel that they can be who they are. And one character that I never actually realized was trans. Again, well, one, because I've never actually played the game, but I've seen clips and whatnot and know the story, but was Lev in The Last of Us Part 2. This was a character who, looking up the character, I learned that they have gender dysphoria, which is a distressor on a person's mental state as they are trying to dictate who they truly are from seeing their assigned gender at birth to their own gender their sex assigned at birth and then their own gender identity. So they are very much in that trans state, but not fully one side or the other. They're still learning about themselves. They're still figuring things out. And I think that's actually very fitting for a game like Last of Us, because it is very much a trying to find your own space, trying to find out who you truly are kind of game. But of course, these games that I've talked about here, Hades, Hogwarts Legacy, Last of Us, these have all come out in the past, 6 years? But if we go back even further to the Super Nintendo, which was, 90s? Mid-90s? You even have the character Flea from Chrono Trigger, who is male but represented as a female, which I think in that point in time was extremely bold, because this was not a topic that, or at least from my understanding, is not a topic that was really talked about much in that time period, especially in video games. So to have that character show up, now of course they are in that game a bad guy, but still having that character representation was, in my opinion, kind of mind-blowing, because I think showing off a character like that, being possible and being shown in general, is a very good thing, I think. And of course, all these characters, these representations, are primarily seen in the modern day. And this topic of gender fluidity, this gender representation, I think is misbelieved or is misunderstood as a more modern thing, that it's being represented more nowadays because it's a trend or something. But in reality, this is very much a historical thing. It's been going on for thousands of years, and some of the most notable mythological characters are, either in that trans community or are very much gender fluid. And even not just mythological figures, but even literal people. There's one that I'll go over here in just a moment, but I think the most notable is the Norse giant and / god Loki, which so many people know thanks to Tom Hiddleston's amazing performance. But Loki is very much a gender fluid character, and he has both that masculine and feminine type of look to them. Sorry, I should say that. And though he is referred to as a he is someone who, transforms themselves. There's one notable myth where a giant comes to build the wall for the Aesir over in Asgard, and Loki comes up with the plan to, I will turn myself into a mare and draw away the giant's horse, so that way the giant doesn't build the wall in time for our deal, so that way we can have a free wall, and he doesn't take away Frigg. And in doing so, accidentally gets pregnant as the mare from the giant's horse and produces the offspring Sleipnir, which is the 8-legged horse that Odin rides later in battles. And of course, he as well is the father with Angrboda of the 3 offspring, Jormungand, Fenrir, and Hel. It's very interesting that even in the Viking period, they had a gender fluid character, showing that even this perceived, super masculine group was very much aware of gender fluidity in their beliefs. Another notable mythological figure is Hapi in Egyptian myth. Hapi is the god of the Nile River. So they're represented as a pharaoh, having the beard as such, but then having the figure of an old man, but also having breasts. And having this physical form is basically meant to represent the fact that the Nile River was extremely fertile, and that having both having both masculine and feminine features was very much a representation of both genders at the time. Now, for Egyptian mythology, we're not sure that they believed in multiple genders or a third gender, but they did, in fact, with Hapi the god, believe that it was possible to have both genders together. I mean, even Greek mythology has Hermaphroditus, a character who has both male and female genitalia. So the Greeks were even capable of believing in a gender fluidity that some in the modern day might not even be aware of. And touching back on the Egyptian life, there was the pharaoh Akhenaten, who is the father of Tutankhamun, King Tut. He was actually the one to revolutionize the Egyptian belief so that there would be one deity. He created a monotheistic belief of believing in Atum, which was the sun. And in doing so, since he was combining all of the gods into one to create the monotheistic belief, he also had art of himself be presented as both masculine and feminine, having the curves of a feminine form, but then having the face of a masculine figure, showing that the pharaoh was a high ruler under the sun god, depicting both masculine and feminine features so that all were one. Even going farther back in history, we have the Galas, which were priests in the Mesopotamian period, who started out as males. Let me double check on that. Yes, so the Galas were originally men who entered into the priesthood under the goddess Inanna, who then took on female names and wore more feminine dresses, while singing hymns, praying, and proclaiming the prosperity of the goddess Inanna in a more feminine tone or in a feminine form. And even in the myth of Inanna descending into the underworld, Galas come to the underworld to reclaim Inanna thanks to Enki, the god of water, or the god of wisdom, I should say. And since there's two, it's meant to represent the connection of the masculine and the feminine for both of them. And of course, this is going on it's believed in the 3rd millennium BCE, so 3000 BCE. And as well, during this time period, there in India, you have the, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, I'm terrible at pronouncing things, the Hijra, I think is how you pronounce it, of Hinduism, which are a third gender within Hinduism. And they are seen within the Ramayana, which is it's a storied text of the epics of the god Rama in his exploits. So at one point during his exile in discovering who he truly is, it's said in the story that he goes to his subjects to follow him into the forest or to go home. And so he calls all of the men and the women in the kingdom to return to their places. And so he goes and leaves for 14 years. But when he comes back, he finds that some remained and didn't go home. And these were the people known as the Hijras, who were the third genders, because some of them were neither men nor women, or some of them were both, so they didn't know where to go. So they just remained waiting. And so they maintained that third gender. And even in the story, it continues that Rama is extremely happy that these people, the Hijras, were so devoted to him as a figure. And so he gives them the blessings of the people. So it says, Rama granted the Hijras the boon to confer blessings on people during inaugural occasions like childbirth and weddings. So it basically gave them the ultimate right within the view of the gods. And these depictions, these representations of gender fluidity is something that is deeply important and deeply rooted in human nature and in human society. And I think it's something that so many people have taken for granted, especially in the modern day, and especially some very specific views take for granted. Because, again, the people who feel seen with these many depictions of gender fluid characters, like who we've discussed here, Loki, Happy, Legalas, Hijras, so on. Even some of the video game characters like Chaos, Serona, Lev, Flea, and of course there are many others that I have not mentioned. But with having these gender fluid characters, many in the LGBTQ plus community feel heard, potentially even understood. They can have a chance and have the moment to find themselves, to see who they truly are. And I think that's actually super important. But yeah, this format, again, is completely different from what my norm is. I have just a few notes in front of me. I don't have a full script. So if you enjoyed this, do let me know. So thank you guys. Love you. And I'll see you all next time.